a new piece. It's about the middle of the page. Morning, Adam. Adam, thank you so much for everything. It's Art Scroll. It's 1982. Tana. We learned in the Breita. The Sal Hayotze Min HaSukkah. You have it, Mr. Haber? 1982. Adam, it's on the left side of the page. Sal Hayotze Min HaSukkah. You have Succah. And the Succah is protruding outside a sukkah. So you have a sukkah. So let's say you made your sukkah, you have your walls, you have your 4 walls, or you only need 3 walls, you have your 3 walls. And then you have Succah that's coming outside, overlapping or over protruding your sukkah. So comes the Breita, and it says that Succah is nidon k'sukkah. That Succah has the status of sukkah. Now, if you tell me that Succah has the status of a sukkah, that means to say that you could sit underneath that spot. And if you look at the picture on the right side, in 1982, Adam, see that picture on the right? So you see, make believe that's you have within the, you have the box, you have the walls, then you see the walls extend, they're coming out further, and then the Succah coming out on top. You see it's open in the front. So what really, imagine, if you look at the Succah, it's like 2 sections, like a line. See, the line on the top indicates the end of the sukkah, of the walls of that first sukkah. And then protruding outside, you have the Succah coming outside. So now this picture is already had, you see that there's walls that extend. So therefore you already have walls on the deal. So let's see the Gemara. Ama Ula. So again, it says Sal hayotze min HaSukkah nidon k'sukkah. The Succah that goes outside the sukkah has the same status as the sukkah itself. That means you could sit under that spot. So the Gemara says, first the Gemara says, "My psal hayotze min HaSukkah." What does it mean? The psal, the Succah. Succah is called psal. What's called psal? Psal is like solet. Solet is the waste product. Is the waste product of the granaries, right? What do you use for Succah? The twigs, the branches, right? So that's moni datin of it. Okay. Okay, so that's called psal. So we're saying, the Gemara is saying that if you have, and you sent to the group that we're on, thank you very much. You have Succah that protrudes, that goes outside the ceiling of your sukkah. So you had Succah that covered your sukkah. But you know what? Okay. You have abundance of Succah. Let's say the bamboo sticks went very far. They were, let's say your sukkah was 6 feet long and the bamboo sticks were 9 feet long, right? So they come outside of, they're coming over the walls. And they're protruding further out. So the Tana says that Succah has the status of a sukkah, which means you could sit under that Succah. The Gemara asked the obvious question: where are your walls? Imagine, think of your sukkah that you have. Imagine you have some Succah they're coming out. So what? So what does it mean? It's like your sukkah. You have to have walls. So that's what the Gemara is going to ask. That's the first question the Gemara jumps on Ula. Ula explains that it's referring to the Succah that's protruding outside the sukkah. It's sukkah. How could you fulfill your obligation? You need to have 3 walls, right? So the Gemara answered, B'te'ika. The Gemara says we are talking about there are 3 walls. Morning, welcome back, Yehuda. So since there are 3 walls, there you go. So the fact that you had your sukkah, Mr. Haber, and your sukkah, but the fact that your Succah goes outside, and your walls extended further than your actual sukkah, right? You had your box, but the walls on the side were longer than the actual extended longer than your sukkah itself. If you look at it at the picture on the bottom of 19A2, you see the walls extend, and you have schach. You see the walls extend. Look at this picture. The walls extended, and you have schach covering over here. So it's true, you have your sukkah inside, but in the back you got your extra wall, and you got your schach on top. You're good. And remember, you don't need 4 walls, right? 3 walls is good enough, Mr. Haber, right? 3 walls is good enough. So you're good. So the Gemara says, but the Beina and Hechta Sukkah. But you know, the space for a sukkah to be kosher, you look at the Gemara, has to be 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim. And the fact that you might have an extension of the walls, and the walls go out for a certain amount, but unless the walls go out and the area inside that's being enclosed is 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim, it's not going to be a kosher sukkah. So the Gemara says we're talking about b'di'ika. We're talking about a case that the walls extended an amount that you have 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim in this area that's covered by this schach that was protruding. So the Gemara said, okay, you might have the walls, and you might have schach, but you know, how much schach do you have that's coming over the sukkah? And if you don't have too much schach, if it's too much shade or sun over shade, right, then it would not be a kosher sukkah. The fact that you have walls and the fact that you have schach, but it's not enough schach, you need more shade than sun for it to be considered a sukkah. And in general, when you have extra schach that's protruding outside your sukkah, it's usually not so much that it is going to create more of a shade than sun. So the Gemara says we're talking about b'di'ika. The case of this Breita is talking when yes, it wasn't more, it was enough schach that was going out that was creating more a dynamic of more shade than sun. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, so Maila Memra, what is the chidush? What is the chidush of the Breita? You have everything, you have all the makeup, all the ingredients of a new kosher sukkah, right, Yehuda? You have the walls, you have the shade, you have the schach. You have the size. What's the chidush? So the Gemara says, you know what the chidush is? The chidush is, Ma'al de Tema, you might have thought, Hoyo legavoy avidi. I thought that might be Mark Asbury coming onto the screen. When I saw that iPhone, I said, wow, here he is. Okay. The Gemara says, morning, Mark. The Gemara says there is a chidush contained. Because remember, the Gemara does not, the Breita is not interested in telling us something that's obvious. That's not what the Breita has come to do. The Breita has come to tell us something that we would not have known. So what is the novelty? So the Gemara says, we're talking about a case, Mark, that a person made a sukkah, and the schach from his sukkah he had a lot overflow of schach, and it came outside the sukkah. It came, you know, it's the roof, and it protruded outside, and it was long enough and wide enough that it was a 7 by 7 tvachim area that it protruded, and there were walls. Usually, if you have schach coming outside your sukkah, right? If your schach extends, there's no walls on the other side. But the Gemara says we're talking about that the walls were also extended. So the Gemara says, what is a chidush? So the Gemara says, it was this sukkah, these walls were made to serve as walls for the inside, for the sukkah that you have, that you were intended to make. But Levroi lo avidi, it wasn't made, these walls weren't made for the purpose of serving as walls for the outside, this new sukkah that was created. It was intended to create walls for the inside sukkah. But it happens to be but they're also but they're walls that could serve for the outside sukkah. So that's the chidush emalo. So you might say this will not be a kosher sukkah. So the Gemara says Kamash Malan. Kamash Malan is that we consider this a kosher sukkah, even though the walls were not made for the intention of a sukkah, but they're there. Now Tosfos has an interesting question. If you look at the Tosfos, the second Tosfos on the page, Levroi Lo Avidi, it was not made for outside the sukkah. So Tosfos says Pirush B'Kuntris, Dofen Emsoyizeh, this wall, middle wall, Lo Nasis L'Kach, it wasn't made for that purpose. The walls were made for the sukkah inside, not for the sukkah, for this new contraption outside. So the Gemara says, V'kosher, meaning, Rashi says, because that middle wall, right? Because, the side walls, maybe you wanted the side walls to be that long, so you intended the side wall to serve whatever purpose it's going to serve. But that middle wall, that's all the way on the inside of the picture, what you face, if you look straight ahead, that middle wall was made for the inside, to serve as a wall for what's contained inside that. It wasn't made as a wall to serve as a wall outside. So the Gemara says, the Tosfos says, we have from the Masisim Sheminilo, the kosher. We learn from the Mishnah that it's kosher, the one assignment. Diktani, we learned in the Mishnah, we had a case in the Mishnah that if you have the ledge that's coming outside the wall, and we said, if from the wall to the sukkah, it's not more than 4 amot, we say that the wall extends, even though the mechitzas level of royavidi, it wasn't made for that purpose. The wall of the house was made to serve as a wall of a house, not to serve as a wall of a new structure outside the house. So Tosfos has a different shot in the Gemara. It's not that the wall, Tosfos says the Gemara was never, there's no novelty in the Breita, there's no chidush in the Breita to tell me that this wall who was made for the inside could serve also for the outside. A wall could serve both, even if it's made for inside, it could usually be served as a wall for a new structure outside. The chidush is the schach. When you place near the konem hayotzi lachuri sukkah, we're talking about the schach. The schach that let's say that bamboo sticks that was going outside the sukkah, they were really made for inside the sukkah. So you might say that's not really called made for a shade, right? The general law for a schach of a sukkah to be kosher, it has to be made for the purpose of shade, to protect from the sun. So the schach that you place inside the sukkah was made to protect from the sun. But if those bamboo sticks extend above the sukkah, outside the sukkah, you would have said that wasn't made for shade. It is serving as shade, but it wasn't made for that purpose. So therefore, that's the chidush, kamashman tekshera. The chidush is that we say that it's also considered kosher. And maybe, we have to know more why. What's the reason? Tosfos didn't explain why, but that's something that has to be looked into. But that's what Tosfos says would be the chidush. The chidush is that even though the schach was placed primarily to serve as shade for the inside, yet we're going to say that you could go ahead and use the schach that's protruding outside the sukkah, and they could serve as the shade for your sukkah. Okay, so let's continue in the Gemara. So the Gemara says, Rabba of Rabbi Yosef. We are now on 19A2, or now we're turning the page, 19A3. Rabba of Rabbi Yosef. Rabba Rabbi Yosef, they offer a different approach. And what's their approach? They say, Haha bikonim hayotzim lifnim min hasukah. We're talking about the the reeds that are going to the inside side of the sukkah. That means that it's going to that open side of the sukkah. We have the reeds that are extending outside the sukkah. Umashcha va'oz l'chadek dofen b'hadayim. And one of the walls of the sukkah is extending together with this schach. If you look at the picture of 22, the schach here is coming, it's going, you have the front of the sukkah, and the front of the sukkah was open, right? See, that's the difference between this case and the case before. The case before is that the schach was extending outside the wall of the sukkah. So it was on the, let's say you have the back, you have a front of the sukkah and you have the back of the sukkah. So the first case of the Gemara was the back of the sukkah, where you have a wall on the back of the sukkah, right? The front of the sukkah is where you walk into the sukkah. There's no wall in the front of the sukkah. Case one of the Gemara was with the back of the sukkah. You have a wall in the back of the sukkah, and the schach went outside the wall in the back of the sukkah. And yet it's kosher because when it went outside the wall of the sukkah, there was another two walls. The walls also extended. So you had the extension of the walls, you have the extent, and you have the extension of the schach, and that created a new sukkah. That was case one of the Gemara. Again, case one of the Gemara was, imagine, think of your sukkah, think of the back wall of your sukkah. And the back wall of your sukkah, schach went outside the back wall of your sukkah, right? That was case one, and that was the picture in 17, the first picture on the right of 1982. It's in back of the wall. Now the Gemara says a different approach. They say, the rabbis say that schach is not coming in the back of your sukkah, the schach is coming outside of the front of your sukkah. Your front of your sukkah, the wall is open. There's no wall in the front of your sukkah, right? They were talking about, it's very common, they would have 3 walls to the sukkah. That means the whole opening of the sukkah was open. Okay, there's no wall walking into the sukkah. So now you have the schach in the front, and the schach in the front, and what happened is the schach is coming in the front of the sukkah. So imagine you have 3 walls, and the 3 walls have proper schach. Okay, but then one of the 3 walls extended further. So you have, if one of the 3 walls extended, that means but the other wall did not extend. So therefore, this wall that extended parallel to that wall, there's no wall. Did you imagine that, everybody? I have a sukkah in front of me. Imagine your sukkah. There's nothing in the front of your sukkah. There's no wall in the front of your sukkah. But you have beautiful schach. You have a beautiful sukkah. But imagine one of the side walls extend, but the wall parallel did not extend. So now we don't have on this. And now the question is, can I sit under the spot where the side wall extended, and I also extended the schach to cover that area that side wall extended? But remember, I got that side wall, I got the back wall, and I got the other wall, which is on the corner, on the right-hand corner. Good morning, Mr. Asby. All right, so Mr. Asby absolutely can sit in there. Very good. But now the question is why?
What's the question?
Because look at this picture.
What that picture is what reference?
This wall could be short all the way up to here. It doesn't matter.
Because 2 walls and a third wall of tefa. Could be tefa. Right. Very good. Let's see the Gemara. Good.
Rabbi, that picture is reference what? What page are we on? 19A, 19B?
We're on 19A3. 19A3. But it said the third wall could be even a tefa, even a short amount. Right. Even though there's nothing on the other side. Right. So let's see what the Gemara says. So the Gemara says, "Umashcha b'kanem hayosef liman hasukah." You see that picture, Dr. Navid? I know you're driving. In 22, it's on 1983. 1983, 22. So, Mao de Tema, you might have thought, it looks like a separate, it doesn't have a hechsher sukkah because it doesn't have three walls on the side over here. So Kamash Malan, so the chidush is that now the question is Mr. Adri's question. What is the chidush of the Gemara here, right? So if you look at note number 24, he says, the question is, do we look at this section as a separate part of the sukkah? That is the thought. A person might have thought that this section is like a separate part of the sukkah. But if you recall, until now, you might have thought that this might be considered a separate sukkah, and it doesn't have the three walls. Let's see if what else they say over here.
It shouldn't.
I'm saying you might have. So the chiddush is we don't look at it. We don't look at this as one area. We don't look at this as a separate entity, and it doesn't have the size of the sukkah.
Why the walls extend? Is that the
Only
chiddush
one
here?
wall extended. So this wall that
I know,
extended,
but what about the other two? What about the other two? The back wall and the
other
side
two
wall
walls,
that is
the
short.
other two walls did not extend. So
Why?
therefore you only have one wall that's covering that area. So therefore you might have thought that since it's only one wall on that spot with the schach, you might have said that it's not. You might have thought that it's not a kosher sukkah. So that's what the Gemara.
I would say that part is not a kosher sukkah.
What you say?
I would say the part that doesn't have the remaining two walls is not a kosher area.
Right, but and that's the chiddush. The chiddush is that we look at this. Morning, Mr. Silverman. We look at this as one sukkah, and therefore we use the rule that if you have two walls and the third wall is, let's say, a tefach or a smaller amount, we could join it. You know, people have this. Yes, so okay, so we have to. What's the chiddush of this? That's Mr. Ajmi's question. Why would this be different than the case of? Now remember, we had the case beforehand, but the question is, what was the picture of the case that we had earlier in the Masechta? We had a case when we had the wall over here, and we had a wall over here. Mr. Ajmi, the answer to your question is the following. Until now, how did the case that we had two walls and the third wall of tefach always the picture of that was the following, that this wall, let's say the wall came, there was a third wall over here somewhere, right? So the question is, we have one wall over here, and we had the third wall here somewhere. So now the question is this picture different than over here? That's the question. Yeah, so it seems very similar to our case of our Gemara. So okay, so we have to see what's the new novelty of this chidush. Why would we say otherwise? Okay, we have to look more into that. Okay, let's continue in the Gemara. A new answer the Gemara gives. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan says, Lo nitzrecha, the case is talking about Ela l'sukkah sheruba silata. There's more shade. Let's see the language of the Gemara over here. If you have, let's see the language of the Gemara. Sukkah sheruba silata meruba mechamata. That miyuta, you have majority of the sukkah has more shade than the sun. But there's a spot in the sukkah, minority of the sukkah is chamata meruba misilata. You have a spot in the sukkah that there's more sun than shade. So now in general, the sukkah has, if you look at the whole sukkah, and you'll look at the sukkah and you'll tally up, there's more shade than sun. But this spot, you have a nice spot, there's a certain spot in the sukkah that is more sun than shade. So you might have said, Mao de Tema, if you might say Tipasel Bahach Purta, you would have said that spot would go ahead and we will look at that spot as a separate spot, and as if that spot is not, if let's say the whole sukkah, if the whole sukkah is, let's say you have a sukkah that's 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim, right? You have sukkah that's 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim, but you have a spot in the sukkah, right? You have, let's say, a 7 tvachim by, let's say the minimal size sukkah, money Aaron, is 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim, but you have a spot in that sukkah that's more sun than shade. So if you're going to say, if you have more sun than shade, so you might say, we'll look at that spot, it's not counted towards the 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim. Now you have less than, you don't have the proper area. The whole, if the whole average, the whole sukkah is 50, there's more than 50, let's say it's 51 to 49, 60 to 40 shade than sun. Kosher. But we're saying the whole, but we're still saying that the whole, but we're saying, when you say you could sit under this, that's the chidush. The chidush said you could sit under that spot. We don't look at this spot, that this spot will ruin, we'll take out from the measurements of kosher spot for the sukkah, and therefore we say you could sit under that spot. You see, you would have thought, if let's say that spot is 3 tvachim, let's say that spot is the 3 tvachim spot, you might have thought that just like if you have airspace, that's 3 tvachim airspace that splits the sukkah. So you would have said this spot, this 3 tvachim spot that has more sun than shade, maybe that will separate, that you count that as you'll say it's a puzzle spot, invalid spot. Kamash Malan, that we look at the whole sukkah like it's one spot. We don't look at individual spots in the sukkah to say, you know what, I got a spot of 3 tvachim that's more sun than shade, so that I'm gonna deal with that separately, just like if I have an airspace of 3 tvachim and I separate it. We say no. We look at that spot as part of the whole sukkah, and if the whole sukkah in general has more shade than sun, you could sit in that sukkah. So the Gemara says, according to this approach, Umay Yotzei, what does it mean? See, the language of the Braita was Psal, one of Mr. Feldman, good to see you. The Braita says, Psal hayotzei min sukkah. Psal means the schach, and Yotzei means it goes out of the sukkah. So until now, when we're referring to schach that's protruding on either side, it's protruding in the front of the sukkah, protruding in the back of the sukkah. So it makes sense. So it makes sense that you could say the language of Yotzei, Psal that goes out of the sukkah. But what does it mean according to this interpretation? According to this interpretation, that we're referring to that there's more sun than shade on a certain spot of the sukkah. So if there's more sun than shade on a certain spot of the sukkah, well, what does it mean that the Psal is going out? Yotzei min sukkah. What does it mean? It's going out of the sukkah. What's going out? There's nothing going out. There's no schach that's coming out. It's just the fact that on the contrary, you're missing schach. That's what the Gemara wants to understand. How does this approach? How does he explain the term, the usage of the words that it's going out? So the Gemara says when it means the going out, it doesn't mean that there's something physically coming out of the sukkah. It doesn't mean there's schach coming out. What does it mean? Yotzi mehechshe sukkah. The schach has left. There's schach that has left the normal amount of schach that's kosher for sukkah. Yotze here means not the schach protruding from a sukkah. It means schach does not have enough shade. There's a spot in the sukkah. There's, let's say, 3 tvachim by 3 tvachim, that there's a spot in the sukkah. You have about 9 to 12 inches of area that has not enough shade. It's more sun than shade on this spot. That's what the Gemara means. That's what the language, the schach that has gone out from the kosher amount, because it doesn't have enough schach in that area. Still, we look at the whole sukkah as one. If at the end, what area was discussing? I mean, if you had here we're discussing if you don't have enough, there's a lot of sun coming in. The only way you'll be disqualified if you have 51% sun to 49% in the whole sukkah. You measure your whole sukkah. What's going on in my sukkah? If there's what? Graded average of the whole area of the sukkah. You don't look at a certain spot. The fact that a certain spot wasn't, the schach was a little thin schach that the sun goes right through, and it really didn't do such a good blockage. It's still kosher as long as the whole sukkah and the whole had more shade than sun. Right. That was even someone sitting under that spot, you're considered it's kosher, because at the end of it, it's not like you're missing. See, if you're missing schach and you have a certain amount, and you're sitting under a spot that misses schach, and that area covers the majority of your body, you're under a spot, the majority of your body is not covered. That's the problem. But your head is not covered with schach. That's the problem. But here we're not talking. Here we're talking about it's light schach, or it's very, it's very, whatever the materials are, that the sun is coming right. It's coming right through. Rav Ushia says, "Lo nitzricha ela l'schach pasul pachot mishlosha b'sukkah katana." I have a sukkah katana. I have a small sukkah. What's called a sukkah katana? Let's say I have a sukkah 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim, which is, around 20. Let's say 7 tvachim could be, if you want to be strict, we'll give it 4 inches for a tefach. 28 inches by 28 inches. That's a very small area. Now, if it's less than 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim, it's not a kosher sukkah. There's a minimal area, right, for a sukkah to be kosher. And I have in that 7 by 7 tvachim, I have schach pasul. I have a certain amount of schach. So I got some metal. Metal is not kosher, and the metal, but it's not 3 tvachim. If it will be 3 tvachim of metal schach, that's considered a significant amount. 3 tvachim, and it's not botel. And if I don't have 7 tvachim, but if I have less than 3 tvachim of metal serving as my schach, it would be kosher. The sukkah will be kosher. So that's what the Gemara says. Ela l'schach pasul pachos b'sukkah katana. And you might have thought, so the chidush is, you could use the metal, and the metal is helping form the shade, right? It's helping form the shade, but since the metal is less than 3 tvachim, we say we have so that part becomes like nullified in the less than 3 tvachim. It's considered like it's closed. We look at it like it's and therefore we consider we have a sukkah. We have what do you say? Do the math without the metal, you have more than 4 tvachim, because you have more than 4 tvachim of kosher schach. So therefore, more than 4 tvachim, because the not kosher is less than 3 tvachim. So more than 4 tvachim of schach is like, we consider that area as if it's closed, that doesn't have the kosher schach, and therefore it's as if it's and it meets the standards of a kosher sukkah. So you also, the law would be, in general, if you have schach that's not kosher, up to, for sure, up to 3 tvachim, you would be able to sit under that. There's a difference between, also, it might have to be how it might depend on the size of those decorations. If you say it's less than 3 tvachim, question Mr. Ashby say maybe they serve as a hefsek. The question is, do they serve as a hefsek between you say here there's no schach, here is metal also. Okay, would have to, okay, but it's from this is what the Gemara it says over here. So it says like this: the law of lavud teaches us that a size that's less than 3 tvachim, such a small size, is considered as if it's not there, and therefore the schach that's pasul, the metal that's in the size, is batel, is considered nullified to the kosher schach, and therefore that's why. So it's nullified. If it's nullified, then it's good. It's nullified. It's not even there. Nullified means that it's batel, and therefore you're sitting under kosher schach. Okay, I hear you. Okay, but that's what the Gemara says. So the Gemara says, "Ma yotzei." Also, what does it mean, yotzei? Again, the same question as the Gemara said before. What does it mean, yotzei? That the schach that's going out. What is it going out? Ma yotzei mitorah sukkah. It's out from the normal laws of Sukkah. Normal laws of Sukkah is you have to have, it's not kosher schach. It's shal, it's schach that has gone out from the normal law of Sukkah, that it's not kosher schach. And the chidush is that even the schach that's not kosher, if it's such a small amount, is considered nullified. It has to be significant in order for it not to be nullified. So that's what the Gemara says. Now, so the Gemara says, Maskefla Rav Oshia. Rav Oshia asked the following question: Lo yehei el avir. You know, the schach pasul. What's the law of avir? So he's asking. What he's asking is, what is the chidush? He's coming the other way. We know if you have empty space, what's the law by empty space? If you have empty space in the schach, if it's less than 3 tvachim, we say empty space less than 3 tvachim is considered lavud. It's as if it's joined. There's a special halacha. Okay, we say the only time you can't sit under that if the empty space goes from one end of the sukkah to the other end of the sukkah. So we say you shouldn't sit if the empty space is large enough that your head could fit underneath, you shouldn't sit underneath it. But the Gemara says over here, but let's say you have the schach doesn't go to the other end and it stops there. The schach doesn't go to the other end. It's a short. Again, where did it go? How far did it go? To that box. And now, and it's less than 3 tvachim. If it's less than 3 tvachim, and it did not go all the way, less than 9 inches by 9 inches, right? And for sure, if it doesn't cover your head, if it's not enough space to fit your head in, you can sit there. What? The head is big enough because you'll be able to sit there. If you have a spot that doesn't empty spot and the empty space does not fit your head in it, you'll be able to sit in that spot. Even though why are we able to sit in that spot? Because we say that the spot, empty space that's so small, is considered filled in, right? And we know that empty space is more serious than not kosher schach. Because really, in general, if you deal with a big sukkah, if you have not kosher schach running across the whole sukkah, the only way it will split the sukkah in half if there's 4 tvachim of not kosher schach. That will split the sukkah in half. Less than 4 tvachim doesn't split the sukkah in half. When it comes, what do you say? But when it comes to empty space, even 3 tvachim splits the sukkah in half. So the Gemara's question is, if empty space is more serious than not kosher schach, and we know if there's an empty space in a sukkah, in a small sukkah, less than 3 tvachim, it's considered closed, and it works. So why do you need to tell me if you have less than 3 tvachim of not kosher schach that it's good? Empty space is more serious than not kosher schach. And if empty space less than 3 tvachim is good, so therefore, why do you need to tell me that schach less than 3 tvachim is good? And to be continued tomorrow. It's time to daven now. We welcome everybody back. Such a beautiful crowd. Yeah. Everybody heard that Mr. Marcus coming today. Everybody wanted to come out to greet him. See that?
A great day, Rabbi.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Aaron, so good to see you. Just thank you for being here.
We're in trouble, that's true.